Hey everybody, this is Mr. Harper. I have a video on how to solve a quadratic by factoring, but I wanted to go over real quick just to make sure you understood how to factor when the leading coefficient, and that's what LC stands for, is leading coefficient, is not 1. So the leading coefficient in this case is 6. So when that's not 1, we factor it a little bit differently. Now we can actually factor every problem the same using what I'm about to show you right now, even when the leading coefficient is 1. But I usually show them differently just because when leading coefficient is 1, there's a simpler way to do it, and so I teach that way. But you can do this right here with any quadratic. So the first thing I'm going to do, and so if you remember, this is my A value, this is my B value, and this is my C value. So when we talk about a quadratic, that's generally how we look at that. And so when I'm going to factor it, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply A times C. So I'm going to multiply A times C. So A times C is 6 times negative 10, which is negative 60. And then what I'm going to do with this number is I'm going to figure out what multiplies to get negative 60 and what adds to get the B value. So the B value in this case is negative 11. Now one way you may have seen it is you may have seen the big X. So you may have seen someone draw like a big X here. Usually they put the negative 60 on top and then the negative 11 on bottom. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what two numbers multiply to give me that number and add to give me that number. In other words, what two numbers multiply to give me the number I got when I did AC, and what numbers add to give me the B value. So it's always the B value that goes here, and then whatever A times C is here. So what you could do to figure this out is you could come over here to the side. I'm going to do that just to kind of help, and figure out what multiplies to give me 60. Now I'm not going to worry about the sign right now. I'm just going to figure out what multiplies to give me 60. So it could be 1 and 60, it could be 2 and 30, it could be 3 and 20, it could be, what, 4 and 15, it could be, there's a lot of numbers, 5 and 12, it could be 6 and 10, and I think that's it, okay? And so looking at this set of numbers, which one could I somehow get negative 11? Now 1 and 60, I can't get that. That would just give me either 61 or 59. 2 and 30 could give me 32 or 28. 3 and 20 could give me 23 or 17. 4 and 15, now that could give me 19 or 11. So it seems like this may be the option here, 4 and 15. So I know 4 and 15, because I can get 11 from that. Now, I need one of these to be negative because I'm trying to get negative 11, also because it has to multiply to give me negative 60. So to get negative 11, the bigger one's going to have to be negative. So it'd be negative 15. So 4 times negative 15 is negative 60, and 4 plus negative 15 is negative 11. So these are my two numbers here. So that's the first thing you do, is you do your A times C, figure out what that is, and then you figure out what multiplies to give me that number and adds to give me the B value. And again, the B value is this number right here. All right, so this is a long process, but we can make it through it. So now what I'm going to do with these numbers is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw two fractions. On the bottom of those fractions, I'm going to put these two numbers that I just found. And on top, I'm going to put 6. Now, generally what I do is, instead of just putting 6, I'll go ahead and just put 6x. And it's always just an x there. You don't put like x squared or anything. But some people don't put the x there. I'll go ahead and put it there. And so what we're going to do now is simplify this fraction. So 6 over 4 actually reduces to 3 over 2, or 3x over 2, because 2 goes into that 3 times, 2 goes into that twice. And then 6 over negative 15 simplifies, 3 goes into that twice, goes into that 5 times. So it'd be 2x over negative 5. So we go through this. Once we go through this, these two numbers go on the bottom, so the form negative 15. and then the a value. So what goes here is always that a value. So in this case, a is 6. That's why I put 6 there. And then we simplify the fraction, which we did. And then these fractions turn into our parentheses. So what I mean by that is 3x over 2 becomes 3x plus 2. And then 2x over negative 5 becomes 2x minus 5. The stuff on top goes in front, the stuff on bottom goes in the back. And then that would be how you factor when the LC is not 1. Now again, you can do that when the LC is 1. But it's usually, again, LC with 1 is a little bit easier problem, so I don't necessarily usually teach it that way, but you can do it that way. And there are other ways to factor, but I've found that this is at least the way that is most consistent and a lot of kids can get it. And so anyway, if you have any questions, always ask.